I'm going to Vegas this weekend to marry my boyfriend, elope, and I'm having second thoughts. Today, he rear-ended someone in a car I got for him under my name and insurance less than a week ago. Silly me, right? I'm furious and I want to lash out at him and say how dumb I think he is. I only did all of this because he has a DUI, which totaled his previous car and made me feel bad about him affording it. Therefore, I got a loan out in my name, financed a car, and put it on my insurance, which we were ultimately going to split. I feel stupid. We have been together on and off many times. I would say he's outgrown and learned a lot from his mistakes. However, I sometimes can't help but feel he lacks common sense. Like his driving skills are so poor, I constantly nag him for the way he drives. I get so annoyed. Last night I had a panic attack and I asked God to show me a sign I shouldn't do Vegas this weekend. I was thinking to let something happen to the car that I just got for him. And sure enough, this morning he accidentally rear-ended someone. He didn't get the other driver's name, phone number, or pictures. Nothing. He gave the guy my insurance info and driver's license. I don't know what to do. I'm stressed about finances, and this happens. I'm frustrated that he doesn't have the capacity to think that maybe he should be extra cautious because this isn't under his name. I feel stupid and I take responsibility for taking this risk, but geez, I'm just not sure if I want to do this. He left my house to go to his and told me how would I feel if I made this mistake and got yelled at like this. I'm pissed. I'm allowed to be angry at him. So he leaves avoiding the issue, making me question everything. If I tell him I don't want to move forward with this wedding, we're done for good, I think. Obviously, the car will tie us together for the time being, but he's very adamant on marrying me or not being with me at all. I'm so confused and anxious. I understand in marriage you're supposed to forgive, but I have a hard time with letting things go. I might be the problem, but I don't feel wrong for being upset. I love him and he's supportive of me. But there are some things that he does that are hard for me to accept, and I know that's not his fault. I feel so angry right now that he can be so reckless that if I marry this guy, I have to accept him for his mistakes. I feel like sometimes I make rational decisions based off my emotions too often, when these can be real-life issues easily handled by someone else. I feel guilty in a way for automatically jumping to cancel our elopement. I'm thinking I don't want to do this. Or is it the anxiety I'm actually getting married? I'm so anxious about everything. I really am burning out quickly. Now, for an update, I replied to a comment, but here's the update. He's gone, keys in my hand, and I'm good now. I'm not marrying this man. There was a lot of feedback I received, and I'm very thankful. Some were honest, brutally honest, and some just insults to me as a person, but it's all good. The ones that gave honest feedback really helped me. This man is a master manipulator, literally making me feel like I was crazy. I'm at fault for letting it happen for sure, but my gut and body were screaming at me. Hives, anxiety attacks, and the sign I got from God, I think, came with the consequences of this financial setback. So I can really understand my decisions. I posted this right after I received the text he was in an accident. I was typing so fast I could tell now reading it a day later, I was just overloaded with emotions. Yes, I may have come here to vent, but I received the validation I needed to get out of the mindset this guy put me in, which is literal prison. He came back. I told him what an idiot he was, and how I was for even thinking he could be responsible for something handed to him. He first said the guy slammed on his brakes when the light turned yellow, and he thought he would go. Then it happened to be he was on his phone. He said no damage, which there is nothing. I might have called him stupid because why the hell wouldn't you get information of this other driver? And told him all he does is make mistakes. And when he left, I said, hopefully you don't crash again. I told him to get out of my face before I cut him with my words. So he left. I was fuming. He came back, said how I kicked him when he was down, and disrespected him by spewing words out of my mouth and not controlling my anger, and no woman will talk to him like that. By that point, I was observing his mannerisms, twitching his fingers and breathing hard. His anger and his loud, obnoxious voice screaming at me for handling it the way I did. I was like, wow, this is the end. He's really making this about me. He said nonchalantly he would pay for the damages and difference in my premium increase. Yeah, okay. I sat there in silence with 100% confirmation that I am in fact making the biggest mistake of my life if I continue this relationship. He said I'm mental and my trauma he caused isn't his problem. It's not. But I know there would be a partner that wouldn't talk to me that way, at least. Suitcase was packed at the door. I told him to leave calmly, and he shut the door. I loved the idea of who he could be in happy moments. But he, in fact, will not change. Someone commented that I'm in love with a narcissist aggressor, and it's true. So much has happened that this cycle is terrifying at this point. I'm sitting here alone, at peace, in the quiet and feeling sad and depleted. But it's better than feeling what I do when he's around making me feel small. I don't use Reddit often, obviously, but I'm glad I came here. I knew it deep down, but I wanted to be wrong about him so bad. It's something some won't understand, and that's okay. I don't want him in my life anymore. This was the loudest confirmation I've ever heard. Those who took the time to address what you see, thank you. Those who spoke truth and gave honest advice, thank you. Also, the ones rooting for me means a lot. I don't have anyone in my life to understand this because narcissists believe in pushing every person out of their way to isolate you. Sounds pathetic, but Reddit yesterday was like a bunch of temporary little besties. So I'm thankful for all the input. It's insane what someone like that can do to your mind. Hoping for peace and happiness and growth in this next chapter. God's obviously got my back, so I'll be okay. And no, I'm not going back. Chucklefuck is done. And I have everything I need to heal from this little bump in the road. Appreciate you all. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Under normal circumstances, I don't believe in signs from the universe or a higher power. But short of the heavens parting and the finger of God wagging a no, no, no right in your face, I'm not sure how much more obvious an intervention you need before you realize and accept this is a bad idea. Get to therapy to figure out how things even got this far, and do whatever you can to disentangle yourself from the car situation so you can move on. Comment 2. Do not marry him. 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 Getting a DUI was his fault. Realizing that another driver was his fault. He refuses to take accountability for his actions. He's not mature enough for marriage, and he sees you as a bank account. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After I decided not to marry him, I thought things would calm down. But I was wrong. The day after he left, I got a call from my insurance company. They informed me that the other driver had filed a claim, and it turns out there was more damage than my ex had mentioned. I was furious. I called him to confront him, and he admitted he had lied about the extent of the damage because he didn't want to stress me out more. That was the last straw for me. I told him I was done for good and hung up. A few days later, I started getting calls from a collection agency. Apparently, he had taken out a payday loan in my name without telling me. I was shocked and felt so betrayed. I had to spend hours on the phone trying to sort it out and prove that I didn't authorize the loan. It was a nightmare. I felt like I couldn't trust anyone anymore. In the midst of all this, I started seeing a therapist. I realized I needed help to deal with the anxiety and stress. During one of our sessions, I mentioned how my ex had always made me feel like I was the problem. My therapist pointed out that this was a classic sign of emotional abuse. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it made sense. I started to see how he had manipulated me over the years, making me doubt myself and my decisions. One night, I was going through some old photos and found a picture of us from when we first started dating. We looked so happy and carefree. It made me wonder how things had gone so wrong. I remembered how he used to surprise me with little gifts and notes, how he would hold my hand and tell me he loved me. But then I also remembered the fights, the lies, and the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. It was like I was living with two different people. I decided to reach out to some old friends I had lost touch with because of him. It was awkward at first, but they were supportive and understanding. One of them even told me she had always had a bad feeling about him, but didn't want to interfere. It felt good to reconnect and have a support system again. A week later, I got a call from my ex's sister. She apologized for everything and told me that he had been struggling with addiction for years. She said he had been in and out of rehab and that their family had tried to help him, but he always relapsed. It was heartbreaking to hear, but it also made me realize that his issues were deeper than I had thought. It wasn't just about the car accident or the payday loan. he had been battling his own demons all along. I started to think about my own family and how I had distanced myself from them because of him. I decided to visit my parents and tell them everything. They were shocked and upset, but they were also supportive. My mom hugged me and told me she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. It was a moment of clarity for me. I realized I had been so focused on him and his problems that I had neglected my own well-being. During one of my therapy sessions, I had a breakthrough. I realized that I had been trying to fix him because I was afraid of being alone. I had always been the caretaker in my relationships, putting others' needs before my own. My therapist helped me see that it was okay to prioritize myself and my happiness. It was a liberating feeling. I started to make small changes in my life. I joined a yoga class and started journaling, and even took a weekend trip by myself. It felt good to do things for me, without worrying about someone else's needs. I began to rediscover who I was and what made me happy. One day, I got a call from my ex. He sounded different, more subdued. He apologized for everything and said he was going back to rehab. He asked if we could stay in touch, but I told him I needed to focus on myself. It was a difficult conversation, but I felt a sense of closure. I wished him well and hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. As I continued my journey of self-discovery, I started to think about my past relationships and how they had shaped me. I realized that I had always been drawn to people who needed fixing, maybe because I felt like I could control the outcome. But now, I wanted something different. I wanted a partner who was whole and could support me as much as I supported them. I started to set boundaries and be more assertive in my interactions with others. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I learned to say no without feeling guilty, and to stand up for myself when needed. It was empowering. One day, while cleaning out my closet, I found an old journal from high school. I flipped through the pages and found a list of dreams and goals I had written. Some of them were silly, like becoming a rock star, but others were more meaningful, like traveling the world and writing a book. It made me realize that I had put my dreams on hold for too long. I decided to start working towards them again. I signed up for a writing workshop and started planning a solo trip to Europe. It felt good to have something to look forward to, something that was just for me. I was excited about the future for the first time in a long time. As I sit here writing this update, I feel a sense of peace and contentment. I know I still have a long way to go, but I'm proud of the progress I've made. I'm learning to love myself and to trust my instincts. I'm grateful for the support of my friends, family, and therapist. And most importantly, I'm hopeful for the future. Thank you all for reading and for your support. Am I the idiot for telling my husband to choose between me and his golf clubs? This is my 30-year-old female 30, first pregnancy, and we're both very excited. Husband, who is 34, is excited to be a dad, generally very supportive and receptive to my feelings or issues I bring up, etc. But lately I feel like he's really dropping the ball when I need a lot of support. A few weeks after we found out I was pregnant, my mom was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. My dad passed a few years ago. I'm an only child and close with my mom, so this hit especially hard. She's been in the hospital over an hour away for the past month, and I've gone up 3 times a week to visit on top of working, thankfully remote. We have a small, out-of-state family, so I'm the main support person for her, so it's a lot, though I'm happy to do it. We moved into our house to take care of the dogs, and my husband has been supportive, but the past few weeks he's started ramping up golf to 3 to 4 times a week. He'll usually do this with the same friend who is married, and I'm friends with his wife. They have no kids yet, and end up spending 16 to 20 hours with the said friend, while I feel like I barely see him. I'm all for him having friend golf time, but it's gotten to the point where there's no balance. I asked to have a date night with him one Friday, which he agreed to, but still had to get a round of golf in first, after playing 3 days in a row, and wasn't home until 6 when we could have had a few extra hours together. My feelings are really hurt, and I've had this conversation with him multiple times. I feel like he could care less about spending time with me, or understanding this is a challenging time mentally and physically for me, and I could use some extra tender, loving care. I've said all this to him multiple times, and he's super receptive, and keeps agreeing to make a change, but his actions haven't followed. He spontaneously golfed yesterday evening because the friend asked. He then came home and said he knew I would be upset, and he felt irresponsible because he did have work to do, but left early. It's like an addiction, haha. Today he played golf with the same friend and some of my close friends' significant others, which was fine and planned for weeks, and I wanted him to go have fun. But then he goes over to this friend's house for dinner without me because I was tired when I got back from the hospital, and I guess I didn't communicate when I'd be home clearly. I'm thinking you've seen this friend 4 days this week, just spent all day with him, and you still go have dinner with him and his wife rather than being home with me. It's 9:30 p.m. and he's still over at their house. Knowing I've had a long day. He lost his dad to cancer when he was pretty young. So maybe it's a weird coping mechanism. We've always had a balanced, independent relationship that gives us both time for hobbies and friends outside of our relationship, but I'm feeling this is overboard. Plus, I am pregnant, hormonal, stressed, and do want to spend some extra quality time with him. Since I've brought up this topic multiple times and thought it was constructive, but see no real changes. I'm getting more upset / less understanding, and I'm so tired of feeling like a nag or begging for his attention, which is starting to lead to fights. And like me lashing out is the only way to get through, which is obviously unhealthy, and I don't want to do. I'm tired of feeling like I'm giving him a hard time, but I'm just at a loss. I almost just want to leave him alone, always be busy so he can live a single life again and see how he likes it. Can anyone relate? Solutions? To add, we are not living with my mom. She's been inpatient at the hospital for over a month. We temporarily moved in to watch her 2 dogs while she's gone, and we'll return home, which is 10 minutes away, when she's discharged. It's currently just the 2 of us in the house. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, I'm sorry. Just saying, as I've lost all my family to cancer. Never been married or have had children. But if my wife was pregnant with my child and her mother was going through cancer, I probably wouldn't even be working, let alone some dumb game like golf. If my wife wasn't pregnant and was dealing with her mother having cancer, I'd spend every minute doing what I could do to help, in some way. I don't have a solution, but I hope he figures it out. I know the Reddit bandwagon jumps on the divorce train, breakup. But this is very well what your future may look like. People deal with trauma in different ways, but I feel for you. Hopefully you have friends / family that can fill this void, and I'd recommend reaching out for help. Comment 2. This is a sign of how much he will help when the little arrives. He is neglecting to support you now. It's the easiest it's going to be for him. Once a baby is involved, it just gets harder. If he can't handle supporting you when it's easy, you are going to be absolutely devastated when he doesn't step up, when his presence and help will really be needed and expected. I hope you talked about expectations before golf came into the picture, so you can hold him accountable. If not, it's not looking good for you or your marriage. I'm sorry about your mother and your husband. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for checking in. So, 2 weeks ago, things took a turn that I didn't see coming. My husband and I had another one of our talks about his golf obsession. I was feeling pretty low, and I guess he could tell because he suggested we go to one of my mom's doctor appointments together. I was surprised, but agreed. It was a long drive, and we had a lot of time to talk. I think it was the first time in a while that we really communicated without distractions. At the hospital, the doctor gave us some tough news. My mom's condition had worsened, and they were considering more aggressive treatments. My husband saw firsthand how devastated I was. I think it finally clicked for him how much I was struggling. On the way back, he was quiet, and I could tell he was processing everything. When we got home, he hugged me and said he was sorry for not being there for me. It felt genuine, and for the first time, I felt like he really understood. The next day, he canceled his golf plans and stayed home with me. We spent the day talking about our future, the baby, and my mom. It was a relief to have him there, but I was also cautious. I didn't want to get my hopes up only to be disappointed again. Over the next few days, he made a real effort to be present. He cooked dinner, helped with the dogs, and even started coming with me to the hospital more often. It was a huge change, and I was grateful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it might not last. Then, something unexpected happened. My husband's friend, the one he always golfs with, had a family emergency and had to leave town. With his friend gone, my husband had no one to golf with, and he started spending even more time at home. At first, I thought it was just because he had no other option, but then he started planning activities for us. We went for walks, watched movies, and even had a couple of date nights. It was like we were reconnecting, and it felt good. But there was still this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I couldn't help but wonder if things would go back to the way they were once his friend returned. I didn't want to bring it up and ruin the progress we had made, but it was hard to ignore. One night, after a particularly good day, I decided to talk to him about it. I told him how much I appreciated the changes he had made, but that I was worried it wouldn't last. He listened and then said something that surprised me. He admitted that he had been using golf as a way to escape. He said that seeing my mom so sick and knowing that we were about to become parents had scared him. He didn't know how to deal with it, so he buried himself in golf. But now, after spending more time with me and seeing how much I needed him, he realized that he couldn't keep running away. He promised to keep making an effort and to be there for me and our baby. Hearing him say that was a huge relief, but I knew actions spoke louder than words. Over the next week, he continued to be present and supportive. He even started talking about going to therapy to deal with his feelings about his dad's death and the upcoming changes in our lives. It was a big step, and I was proud of him for taking it. As for me, I was still dealing with a lot. My mom's condition was weighing heavily on me, and being pregnant made everything more intense. But having my husband by my side made it a little easier. We were in this together, and that made all the difference. One day, while we were at the hospital, my mom had a moment of clarity. She looked at me and said, "You need to take care of yourself and that baby. Don't worry about me." It was hard to hear, but it also made me realize that I needed to focus on my own health and well-being. I couldn't do it all, and that was okay. In the midst of all this, I found out something about my husband that I never knew. He had always been the strong, silent type, but one night he opened up about his childhood. He told me about how his dad's illness had affected him, and how he had always felt like he needed to be the strong one for his family. It made sense why he had been struggling to cope with everything now. It was like a puzzle piece falling into place, and it helped me understand him better. So here we are, 2 weeks later. Things aren't perfect, but they're better. My husband is making an effort, and we're communicating more. My mom's condition is still serious, but we're taking it one day at a time. And as for me, I'm trying to focus on the positive and take care of myself and our baby. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for snooping through my boyfriend's computer and finding out he's a serial cheater? My boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 months. I have asked about his dating history more than once, and he told me he had a 5-year and a 1-year serious relationships, a 2-month thing, and a few Tinder dates. I snooped through his computer yesterday, initially to find out what kind of corn he watches to surprise him. I know this is a stupid idea. I regret crossing the boundary, and I still feel guilty about it. What I found is that he mainly uses Reddit to watch corn, comment on not safe for work threads, and direct message girls online. He would ask them if they wanted his weenie pics, if they would like to swap pics, if he could have their Snapchat, etc. It looks like he would also be down for sexting, online role-playing, video intimacy, and stuff. I wouldn't mind too much if he was single doing this, but according to his dating timeline, most of those comments, direct messages, were sent while he was still in either one of the 2 serious relationships. To me, that's cheating. I then found a folder on his computer desktop full of nudes of his exes. Nudes they sent to him. Screenshots of their video intimacy, pics taken during intimacy, etc. Some of them seemed to be screenshots of WhatsApp View Once images. They were classified into subfolders with their name initials. There were folders of his 5-year ex, his 1-year ex, and another girl who he always introduced as a friend. I have met her before, and they seem to be close still, but he never mentioned they had dated. Looking into the timestamps of those nudes, I realized some of them overlapped with his 5-year exes. I think he cheated on her. I was shocked, angry, and sad with what I found. I feel disappointed that he lied to me about dating that friend. I feel nauseous that he'd keep all those nudes. I feel heartbroken that he seemed to have cheated on both his exes, both online and offline. I have been cheated on before by my ex, and I am still traumatized. I can't look at him the same. When he kisses me, I feel like a dead body. I've been crying all day, but I still like him. We have so much fun together, and I feel like I'm in the wrong for violating his privacy. They were in the past. He hasn't cheated on me. I can't bring myself to break up with him at the moment. I don't know if I can. I want to communicate with him about this. I want to tell him how hurt I am by his past. I want him to delete all those nudes. I want him to admit to having cheated before and promise to never do this to me. Maybe this is pointless, but that's the best thing I can think of. But I also don't want to turn this into a big fight. And I would need to admit to digging up his past in the first place. How should I get over my feelings? How should I approach the conversation? What can I do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I snooped through his computer yesterday. This guy doesn't sound like the best boyfriend material. But are you really snooping on his devices 2 months into the relationship? Disgusting. Break up with him and do some self-reflection before dating again. Comment 2. Delete the folder, then leave him. This happened to my friend, and that's awful. He wouldn't delete the pictures in front of her, so she'll never know if he still has her nudes or not. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So after my last update, I decided to confront my boyfriend about everything I found. I couldn't keep it bottled up any longer. I sat him down and told him that I needed to talk about something serious. I admitted to snooping through his computer and finding the nudes and messages. He was visibly upset that I invaded his privacy. But I could see a flicker of guilt in his eyes when I mentioned the nudes and the messages. He tried to downplay it at first, saying that those were old and he just never got around to deleting them. He said the messages were just harmless fun, and that he never actually met up with any of those girls. I told him that it didn't matter if he met up with them or not. The fact that he was doing it while in serious relationships was a form of cheating to me. He got defensive and said that everyone has a past and that I was being unreasonable. I asked him about the girl he introduced as a friend and why he never mentioned they had dated. He hesitated and then admitted that they had a brief fling, but it didn't mean anything, and they decided to stay friends. I felt a knot in my stomach because it felt like he was hiding things from me. I told him that I needed him to delete all the nudes and promised me that he wouldn't do anything like this while we were together. He agreed to delete the nudes, but he was reluctant to make any promises about his future behavior. He said he didn't want to be controlled and that he should be trusted to make the right decisions. This response left me feeling uneasy, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Over the next few days, things were tense between us. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and he seemed distant. I tried to focus on the good times we had together, but the images and messages kept replaying in my mind. I started to notice little things that I hadn't before, like how he would always keep his phone face down and get defensive if I asked who he was texting. One night, we went out with some friends, and I noticed him being overly friendly with a girl in our group. They were laughing and touching each other in a way that made me uncomfortable. I tried to brush it off, but it was eating me up inside. When we got home, I confronted him about it, and he accused me of being paranoid and jealous. We had a huge fight, and he stormed out, saying he needed some space. He didn't come home that night, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I started to question if I was being too controlling or if my feelings were valid. The next day, he came back and apologized for the fight, but he didn't offer any explanation for where he had been. I decided to let it go for the sake of our relationship, but I couldn't help but feel like something was off. A week later, I found out that he had been messaging the girl from our friend group. I saw a notification pop up on his phone while he was in the shower, and I couldn't resist checking it. The messages were flirty and suggestive, and it was clear that he was trying to take things further with her. My heart sank, and I felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over me. I confronted him again, and this time he couldn't deny it. He admitted that he had been messaging her, and that he was confused about his feelings. He said he still cared about me, but wasn't sure if he was ready for a committed relationship. I was devastated. I had given him a chance to prove himself, and he had let me down. I decided to end things right then and there. I couldn't be with someone who didn't respect me or our relationship. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, but I knew it was the right one. I packed up my things and left his apartment, feeling a mix of relief and heartbreak. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on myself and my healing. I reached out to friends and family for support, and they helped me see that I deserved better. I started to reflect on my past relationships and realized that I had a pattern of choosing partners who were emotionally unavailable or unfaithful. I knew I needed to break this cycle and work on my self-worth. I also thought a lot about my boyfriend's past and how it had shaped his behavior. I remembered a conversation we had early on in our relationship where he mentioned that his parents had a tumultuous marriage with infidelity on both sides. He had grown up witnessing this and had internalized it as normal behavior. It made me sad to think that he might be repeating the same patterns he had seen as a child. But before I get into that, I want to mention that I found out something else that added another layer to this whole mess. While talking to a mutual friend, I learned that my boyfriend had been seeing a therapist for a while. He had never mentioned this to me, and it made me wonder what else he was hiding. The friend told me that he had been struggling with commitment issues and trust, which made sense given everything that had happened. I started to see that his actions were not just about me, but were rooted in deeper issues that he needed to work through. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand why he might have acted the way he did. I realized that I couldn't fix him or make him change. He needed to do that on his own. As I moved forward, I decided to focus on my own growth and healing. I started seeing a therapist to work through my trust issues and past traumas. It was a difficult journey, but I knew it was necessary for my well-being. I also made a promise to myself to be more discerning in my future relationships and to prioritize my own needs and boundaries. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.